Bleach anime ceased to exist in 2012. Now, 10 years later, it's back with its supposed final season, the 1,000-Year Blood War. And you know what that means. I watched all of Bleach in just 2 weeks to get caught up for this final season. And by caught up, I mean I finished the Arrancar arc. So I figured I'd give my take on the good and bad of Bleach. Let's get into it. Spoiler warning for the Bleach anime up through episode 310 and the Arrancar arc, so be careful. The anime starts pretty strong with the Soul Society arc, which introduces the Soul Reapers, most notably the captains and their lieutenants. These guys are insanely strong, or at least you think that until 10 days of training Ichigo comes in and beats some of the strongest captains. This is what starts the ridiculous level of plot armor. Later in the show, there's a reveal that attempts to justify this plot armor, but it still doesn't sit quite right with me. In this arc, we get introduced to our main bad guy, Aizen. He's introduced as a captain, but a little later on we find out he's kinda sus. The next arc is the Visored arc, where we meet a lot of people that are kind of in the same situation as Ichigo, our main character. They all got kind of like that mask hollow stuff going on that Ichigo also has. This is really just a training arc, training Ichigo to be able to be competent to go and invade Aizen's territory. This leads us to the Arrancar arc, which is the strongest part of the show thus far. They introduce a powerful group of individuals called the Espada. A lot of the fights in this arc are pretty good, but there are a few parts during the beginning that are kinda hard to sit through. There was this forest area that was just filled with a bunch of mindless hollow grunts, and it took a while to get through that area. What felt like hundreds of episodes was probably like 10, but this is where I fell out of the show the first time around. The power scaling in this arc is weird. Remember how Ichigo was beating the captains at the very beginning of the show? Well, these same captains are now capable of beating Espada, which seemed near unbeatable. It feels like pretty much all of the good guys got so much stronger so quickly. It felt pretty plot armory. Like the good guys were always just strong enough to advance the plot. It's anime, it's whatever, but I never felt like the good guys could lose, even when they probably should have. There's certainly a lot to love in Bleach. It features a great array of side characters, some good fight scenes, and a great villain. Starting with its side cast, which is quite expansive. There are 3 groups we're really going to be talking about: the captains, the Espada, and the Visored. The captains are great. They're introduced really early on, and they stay relevant for the entirety of the show. Much like the Chunin exams, they introduce a huge cast of characters, kind of as enemies at first, and then soon after that they become allies. Each of the captains have their own unique ability. Some are cooler than others, and some just summon big guys. Like this dude summons a Susanoo, and this dude summons a giant baby caterpillar guy. We get a lot of backstory later in the Arrancar arc for these characters, and when we do, they become a lot more likable. Like the blind guy, the dog guy, and Takashi 69. They have a really interesting intertwined backstory that goes on for a few episodes. And after that, I no longer want to refer to them as the blind guy and the dog guy. The Espada are Aizen's strongest lackeys, relative to the captains in number and strength. Much like the captains, they each have a unique power, but they also have a transformation that powers them up a lot. Many of them also get an expansive backstory as we move further in the arc, solidifying them as likable characters and not just blindly fighting for Aizen. One character, the King of Hueco Mundo, which is actually the second Espada, he has a really interesting story that shows him meeting Aizen, and it's pretty cool. I mean, he was the King of Hueco Mundo, which is Aizen's territory. Aizen infiltrated it, met him, and displayed his power, and the King of Hueco Mundo was like, yikes, this guy's pretty scary. But all along, he just wanted to get revenge. He hated him. He hated Aizen. He took his kingdom. Wouldn't you want revenge? And his power is insane too. I mean, this guy seems unbeatable, but he's a bad guy, so he does lose. And for the Visored, they're similar to the other groups, having a unique power, but they're half hollow, which is pretty cool. There was a really good backstory segment that ties together the Visored and the captains and Aizen, and it's one of the strongest parts of the show. It shows that fateful night where it all went down. There are some really good fights in Bleach. Ichigo vs Ulcoria, Haribel vs Toshira, and you can't forget the best fight, Aizen vs Don Kanonji. The good fights in this series are actually really solid. Good sword fighting, good transformations, and a really big cast of characters, which means for a lot of unique powers. The battle system is really cool. Every character just has some really unique powers that are really good, and the captains have bankais, the Espada have transformations. The downside of these fights is they're kind of predictable. Like I said earlier, the good guys always win, which is unfortunate when there's a good guy and bad guy. It means that one guy is gonna win, and you probably know who is gonna win. Let's take the Ichigo versus Okoria fight, for example. It's really flashy, there's guys flying around, it's a really good in-air fight, it's really cool. I mean, it's a solid fight, but the end feels unfair. Ichigo lost that fight. I mean, let's be real. He practically died. Actually, I think he did die. And would you believe it? Ichigo gets a seemingly random power-up and then defeats him. Just like when he fought Byakuya at the very beginning of the show. He loses, and then right as you think he loses, he gets a weird random power-up, and he wins. And I get that that was part of the show, like the Aizen plan and all, I get it. But it's kind of predictable. This dude was really unbeatable. I mean, Ichigo had no business winning this fight, in my opinion. But that's kind of how I felt the entire show. Is that, why is the guy winning that has 10 days of training? Like actually why? Knowing Ichigo is gonna pull something and win. And even when he loses, he's spared. He's never killed. And that's okay. That's fine. But just know it's coming. Power scaling. Now, I'm not a power scaler. I'm not one of those crazy Reddit guys that's like, can he beat Goku though? No. But he can beat any villain. He being Ichigo, or really any good guy. I feel that Bleach is one of the most plot armor shows I've ever seen. This was the last of the big three that I had to watch, and it feels like it has the least stakes of all. The problem with the power scaling is that everyone gets so strong so quick. Like the captains that lost to 10 days of training Ichigo are comparable to that of Espada. I mean, sure, they could have trained in between arcs, but they're like hundreds to thousands of years old. So what were they doing losing to 10 days of training Ichigo at the beginning? Come on. The main villain of the story is Aizen, and what a damn good villain he is. Only making one simple mistake the entire series. Playing with these damn high schoolers, giving Ichigo a chance to train in the hyperbolic time chamber for 3 months. I mean, seriously, the dude walked around the town just messing with these high schoolers for like 2 hours, for like 2 episodes actually. And then Ichigo shows up and he's just broken. I mean, he just trained for 3 months. Of course he's gonna be strong, but still, it was dumb. Let me tell you that I knew about Aizen watching this. I mean, it would be hard not to. The series is 10 years old. But that being said, his few monologues where he talked about how he planned the entire show still gave me chills. When he reveals everything to Ichigo, I thought that was some of the coolest shit in anime. Aizen says, "You really thought your strength being comparable to that of captains was due to your own strength? No, it was me. I planned this shit all along." And right at that moment, I realized, oh, my complaints about power scaling are all for nothing. But no, they aren't. Ichigo goes and one-shots Aizen. Power scaling. Well, everything was according to the plan. Everything. I mean, he even knew that Gin was gonna cross him. He literally knew everything and planned everything perfectly. And then was hacked out by some emo orange guy. It isn't right. Shouldn't have happened that way. I'm an Aizen stan. He should have won. Honestly, I could probably make an entire video about how cool this villain is and how his plan was so amazing. But I really think the end of that arc was rushed. I get it. You were supposed to show the ridiculous power level that Ichigo has now and the fact that he can one-shot this guy. But, I mean, I could say a bunch of stuff about plot armor here. But come on. Kisuke pulling some ceiling trick was cool and all, but I really don't think that it should have just stopped Aizen in his tracks. When Aizen fought, he didn't break a sweat the entire time. And then 3 months of training Ichigo comes in and Okos him. Just beats him in one attack. And I guess the Kisuke ceiling support. But still, I really thought the Ichigo Aizen fight was gonna be hype. I thought it was gonna be a struggle that lasted a few episodes. But instead it was just Ichigo being an undefeatable god. Now I'm sure he comes back. He was imprisoned, not killed. So I'm sure he comes back. Hey, no spoils, okay? If I see a spoil in the comment, you a bitch. So just how good is Bleach? It's alright. If you want to watch a show for some good fights and some good story and a great villain, then give it a watch. But it's lacking stakes. And I think you'll probably feel unsatisfied sometimes, like I was. Unless you just want to see the good guy win. Then you'll be satisfied. I know some people that really love Bleach. It might be a bit of nostalgia, but anime is subjective. At the end of the day, you might think my favorite anime is cringe. So watch Bleach, don't watch Bleach, but admittedly, the new season looks really cool, so I'm gonna watch it. You should consider subscribing. A lot of good content coming to the channel. Bye.